I want to give you a little background today of my travels and how it is that I came to be known as the Snowbird Gardener. I think it is so cool when people take a map and show where they've been or where they're going. So that's what I'm going to do. 4 years ago, I started a search. I started searching for a summer home. And here is the path that I took. My first trip was from Southern California to Flagstaff, where I camped for a week, boondocking in the forests around the Grand Canyon. My second trip was to Northern California. Wherever I would go, I would look for land that was for sale. So I came up the 5 freeway from Southern California. I boondocked one night at Harris Ranch. That's the biggest ranch in the United States. And they have free RV parking there. Then I came up through the San Francisco Bay Area to Sacramento and on up the 5 to a town called Red Bluff. And just to the west of Red Bluff is a place that had some property for sale called Rancho Tehama Reserve. Then I went farther north, past Redding, and up to Lake Shasta. Came back down and took this road out to look at Mount Lassen. Then I headed south again, came down this way, and went over to Yuba City and Grass Valley, where I visited my aunt. Always looking at property, always looking at land for sale. From Grass Valley, I went up this way through Sierra City, Gray Eagle, up and around Lake Almanor, and ended up in Susanville. From there, I took a trip up to Eagle Lake and back down to Susanville. I camped one night in Susanville at a place just outside of town where there was a firing range, and the policemen would come out there and fire their guns. So it was kind of noisy, but they quieted down when it got dark, so it was fine. I took this road down and made a big loop back around this way and came through the same road, but I didn't go to Lake Almanor that time. I took another road that brought me back down here through Strawberry. Let me see if I can draw it on the map. Yeah, there's the road right here going south through Strawberry. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful place. High mountains. There was snow up there in the summer. Back to Yuba City, where I spent the night at a truck stop in Yuba City. The next day, I headed west and spent the whole day around Clear Lake. Lots of cute little towns around Clear Lake, and the prices were kind of reasonable. Then I found out Clear Lake is polluted with mercury. I headed to Ukiah, another beautiful little town. But as I spent more time there looking at property, I actually went to the laundromat and did some laundry, talked to some of the local people. There's a lot of agriculture there, lots of olive trees, lots of grapes, and you could definitely smell the pesticides in the air. So I headed north. I checked out the redwood forests, absolutely beautiful. Made it all the way to Eureka. Loved that area, especially this area here around Ferndale. I spent a couple days there. I stayed at a casino one night, and I stayed at a dog show one night. They had a special area where RVers could park. Just loved Eureka. I investigated the areas around Arcata. I took this road out through Willow Creek. I made it to Burt Ranch, and I was hoping to complete this loop over here to the 5 freeway, but it was getting really hot that day. There was so much traffic that I came back, stayed around Eureka and Ferndale. Absolutely beautiful. It was definitely an area that was on my short list. From Eureka, I took this road east through Dinsmore to the Mad River and back again. Absolutely beautiful area. All of the property that I looked for and that I looked at, on none of the property in California could you put an RV if you owned the land. I was talking to a lady at one of the counties one day, and she said, the only way that you can put an RV on the land that you own is if you own an RV park. That was an interesting thought. When I was just about ready to head south, I got a call from my son. He travels in his work, and he happened to be in the Bay Area for a couple days. So I headed on south, down the way that I came up. I went back through Ukiah, Healdsburg, Santa Rosa, Petaluma, and into the Bay Area, where I caught up with my son. Then I headed south out of San Jose, went through Salinas, over to Monterey. Seaside was a beautiful, beautiful town. I stayed in Salinas that night at a Denny's. Certain places, they have restaurants where you can actually park your RV overnight, and you can sleep there as long as you leave early in the morning. Cracker Barrels do that. Some Walmarts do that. So next morning I headed south, down through King City to Paso Robles. I looked at some land around Paso Robles and on down to San Luis Obispo. I looked at land near Lake Nacimiento. I investigated Atascadero and Harmony. There's a beautiful place on the beach right here. I spent a night at the Home Depot in San Luis Obispo, and I looked at some land in Santa Margarita, and then headed south to the ocean. I looked at some land in Arroyo Grande and spent the night at Cracker Barrel in Santa Maria. Then I went on down to Lompoc and came around through Gaviota. I spent some time in Solvang. All fantastic places. But not for me. About 40 years ago, I used to spend a lot of time around Santa Barbara, Oxnard, and my goodness, how it has changed. Once you get to Santa Barbara, it's city all the way. My third year of travel, Colorado was my destination. I had grown up in Colorado, but there were a lot of places that I have never seen. I came up through Arizona, through the Four Corners area, and to Durango. I loved the town of Cortez, and from Durango, I headed north up this beautiful pass, and it was more than I bargained for. There are a couple really high mountains on that road. Woo! But it was good. I went through Ouray, Ridgeway, on up to Montrose. I headed east from Montrose to Gunnison, and that night I found a place to camp at a hiking trail. Beautiful rock formations that people climb, and you're allowed to park overnight in the parking lot. The next day, I left Gunnison, went over Monarch Pass, through Salida, through Canyon City, and up into Colorado Springs. I spent about a month in the Denver area and around my hometown, Castle Rock, just south of Denver. Some of the towns that I explored as possible summer homes were Elizabeth, Kiowa, Franktown, and I headed back up to Canyon City and Salida, two of my favorite places. They were definitely on my short list. I spent a lot of time camping around Canyon City, and Salida was my daytime camping. One day trip I took was from Salida to Buena Vista to Hartselle and back to Canyon City, checking land and prices all the way. I searched the area from Colorado Springs through Woodland Park, Lake George, and down to Cripple Creek. All beautiful areas. But nothing jumped in my heart. Some friends of mine from college have a son who has a farm in Delta, which is really significant because that's one of the towns that my mother grew up in. I believe she lived in Delta when she was a very small girl, and then she moved to Grand Junction. And there's another town around here, too, that she's lived in, Cedar Ridge. There it is. So I was very fortunate to get to spend some time in the towns where my mother grew up. I spent some time in Pueblo, out east of Pueblo. And when the first snow was predicted, summer was fading fast in Colorado that year, I headed south, on out of town. I loved the town of Walsenburg. I loved the town of Trinidad. And the fun thing that day, as I was heading south, the road was absolutely full of cars with Texas license plates. They were all heading out to get out of the first snow. That was the year the world shut down. So as I headed south into New Mexico, Raton is one of my favorite towns. But that year, New Mexico was not welcoming visitors. They said, if you're driving through, just get your gas and go. Do not stop. Just keep going. So I went past Santa Fe, past Albuquerque, and on into Arizona. I came into Arizona, past Holbrook, past Winslow, into Flagstaff. I was already quite familiar with the Flagstaff area. The 89 going up this way, the 180 going up this way and up to the Grand Canyon. I was pretty familiar with Williams. I was able to take some side trips back to Winslow, down this red road, down to Payson. Lovely town. Lots of these towns were on my short list. Strawberry and Pine. I looked at property there. Headed out this way. Went to Sholo, Snowflake, and back to Holbrook. As beautiful as they were, none of these little towns jumped in my heart. And I headed back to Flagstaff. Next day, I headed out through Williams to Ash Fork. Down this road through Chino Valley to Prescott. Oh, how beautiful. Back to Prescott Valley. Up over the mountain here through Jerome. Absolutely beautiful. Down the hill to Cottonwood and up to Sedona. A funny thing happened when I got to Sedona. I knew I had found my place. Sedona, Arizona, the best town that I had seen in all my travels. My search was over. And that's the story of how I became the Snowbird Gardener. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you again next time. I hope you enjoyed seeing all my travels, where I went. And I just want to give God all the glory. He helped me. He led me and guided me. He kept me safe and took me to where I was supposed to be. I just thank him so much. Jesus is the truth, the life, and the way. I'll see you again. Bye-bye. Mwah. Adios.